Alright, so slide number 5, you can actually see there's the 5 investment criteria for your particular viewers, yeah? So what happens is this. Number 1, if you're looking at buying into Malaysia, the first thing you need to look into is the international expat community. So as a Hong Kong buyer, the first thing you need to understand is that you must look into the expat community. Right, that's where the Hong Kong people are. That's where they spend their days there. That's where they buy their property. That's where they send their kids to school. That's where they buy their grocery. You need to have this kind of support system in place. For first things first, you need to get that support system in place for you to have a very meaningful stay in Malaysia. Right? There's no point for you buying in a place even though they might be great, but you've got no support system. So always focus on the international expat community. These people has been in Malaysia for the past 10-15 years. They know for a fact that whether the property that they bought is actually a good one or a bad one. Right? Number 2, always focus on the international schools. Now, I'm gonna take a stab into KLCC, right? There's a reason why the rich people in Malaysia, right, or the rich people who are the expats don't particularly choose KLCC if they've got a family, is because the lack of international schools in KLCC, right? So if you are single, the likelihood of you choosing KLCC is quite high because you want to stay there. There's got a nightlife there, etc., etc. But if you've got a family, you've got a wife, 2 kids, and a dog, right? You don't want to choose KLCC because there's a lack of international schools. Right? You need to drive 2 hours to and fro, approximately 2 hours to send your kids to school and go back to your office, right? So always focus on international schools. You need to have that if you're looking to stay here long term, right? The third one is actually the commercial vibrancy and also the first class infrastructure. You don't want to stay in a place where there's not even a proper mall, right? So you've got always look for something with a proper mall, with a proper grocer that you can do your shopping in, and your first class infrastructure, meaning your highways, right? So all these things contribute to a better living standard if you're planning to stay here or you're planning to invest here. Because you see, once you buy into Malaysia, the dream or the target is to actually rent it out to expats, right? The expats will always look into these criteria first and foremost. So the chances of you getting an expat tenant is much higher if you follow the criteria, right? So number 4, you always have a plan B, right? So I know it's going to be very, very hard for your viewers to identify the median price because it takes local knowledge or local capabilities to identify the median price of the area, and then you use the property to benchmark against the median price of the area. So you need the local knowledge, right? So it's actually quite rather simple if it's for your own viewers. You always have a plan B. Now, what plan B means is this. A lot of people, agents, when they approach your viewers, right, they will say that, hey, you're buying for own stay. It doesn't matter. So long as you like it, buy. You can afford, buy. That is not a good idea or a good strategy. The reason why is because what if you want to move back to Hong Kong? After 5 to 10 years, what if you want to move back, right? What if you want to move to Singapore, right? People's needs change, people's wants change, right? So having a plan B makes sure that you, number 1, first and foremost, you don't lose money, right? So always look for properties that will give you a 4% rental yield. So now, why do I say that is that if you look at the median price of KLCC and you take any properties in KLCC, take the rental, the average rental on that area, divide it up by your purchase price, you can actually see, you can roughly know whether you're hitting the 4% or not. So always focus on the properties that will give you the 4% rental yield. If you can hit the 4% rental yield, you're relatively safe, you're at least on median. Alright? So number 5, always remember, never pay foreigner price. Now, this is an insight to your viewers. This is an insight to your investors that a lot of people dare not say it out loud. I'm going to make a lot of enemies right here to say this, but I will say it out. A lot of times, these projects that are brought over to Hong Kong are all the mai jing for, meaning we cannot sell. Malaysians don't want to buy. I've exhausted every opportunity, every avenue to sell to Malaysians. I cannot sell. Now, I bring it to Hong Kong, hopefully, willingly taking in people who are most likely getting suckered into this. So they always have a foreigner price that they sell it to Hong Kong. But the reason why is because even about the Malaysian price, this price does not make sense to Malaysians. Even the Malaysians novo rich. Malaysians are rich. If you look at the Mont Kiara price versus the KLCC price, they are actually more or less the same. Look at TTDI, Bangsa, they are more or less the same. but the Malaysians will buy in Montera, the Malaysians will buy in Bangsa, will buy in TTDI, and they will not buy overpriced, hyped up stuff, right? Predominantly in KLCC. So those are the things that they're actually pushing it out to foreigners, the leftovers that nobody wants. So focus on these 5 criteria. You will most likely never make the wrong purchase. Focus on these 5 criteria. That's my advice to your buyers.